Hi guys, and welcome back to the Daily Racing Show here at RacePlazaMedia. And today is Monday, so we're going to talk about everything that we watched this weekend.
Racing related,
yes, indeed.
and it was a lot.
Yeah,
I think we watched a good chunk of racing.
I think this was probably the most racing we've watched this year so far in a weekend. Specifically, we watched a lot on Saturday.
Yeah, we did watch a lot on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot happening this weekend. We of course, didn't watch everything because there's so much more happening in the world.
Yeah.
But I feel like the racing that we saw was definitely interesting and lots to talk about.
Yes, because it was actually a lot of good racing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of good racing, but yeah, I think we should just get into it because it's so much. So, first things first, we watched on Sunday the first race of the year for MotoGP.
Yes.
You also watched a sprint on Saturday.
Correct.
I didn't because I was working hard. Okay. It's hard at work. I didn't have the time, but you watched it. So
yes.
How did you like it?
I mean,
also now compared to have seen the full race now.
Yes. I think it's super interesting. I've never seen a MotoGP race, or neither one of us had seen a full race before. So this was our first experience, the race in Qatar. Some of the names were more familiar, especially because you've made the video kind of breaking down MotoGP, but I feel like there's still so much to learn about it, which I'm excited about, to watch more of it and learn more about it as we see more races, because there was definitely a couple questions that came up, like different terms that I didn't quite understand yet or wasn't familiar with. But overall, I think it's absolutely insane. Like the speed, like the acceleration we've already talked about, it's as fast as an F1 car, which is absolutely...
from 0 to 60 or 100. Yeah.
It's absolutely insanity. And then, but still the speeds that they drive. So I think top speeds were like 350 kilometers per hour, which is crazy fast considering you're on two wheels.
I think you can also see when they show like replays and stuff like that, especially when they go through the corner. Obviously, we can see that they're touching the ground, right? And that's like everyone kind of knows that because that's why they're wearing the protective stuff and stuff like that. But I think what is also so interesting, like how much they're also like on the side of the tire, right?
Yes.
It's crazy because one of the reasons why they go through the like track slower than an F1 car is because they don't have as much grip, right? You first of all only have two tires to find grip with, and then also like when they go through these corners, they're like on the very edge, half on the side of the tire, and it's absolutely crazy.
It's crazy. Like I remember seeing pictures of them, of course, like leaning into the corners, but I had no idea how low they go, that they actually purposely, I guess, touch or not touch. Well, I mean, I don't know if they touch it the whole time or like if they...
I think they will probably avoid touching it, but they're going to get as close as they can because I'm sure touching it might make you slower.
True, very
That's
true.
Friction, right, that you're building up.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting to see that. There was also really cool when you watch it. We ended up watching it on Max because it's available here in the US to watch on Max, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, for now it's for free. So if you do have HBO Max and you're in the US,
it's
check it out.
included in your subscription if you pay for it already. But yeah, I was really surprised. I love that they showed the angles at which they show like a speedometer a lot of times, so you know kind of how fast they're going. They're showing the braking information, and then also that they're angled at 60 degrees was like the top numbers, I guess. And I thought it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And then also, yes, we joked about how funny they look in their suits because they can barely move. They're like robots. But it's also impressive that with so little, I mean, it looks like little protection, they're so protected. Because we saw one of the guys in the main race, in the feature race, Jack Miller, the Australian, he fell off the bike, but he ended up getting back on and racing, which I think it's mind-boggling. At the speeds that they go, that they can just fall off, shake it off, and get back on the bike.
So I think in my research of MotoGP, they were talking about they have like quote unquote, I'm not quite sure exactly what the term is. I think it's low falls and high falls. So low falls is essentially kind of what happened to him. I think he leaned too far and then he just slid out. And those are very those are the type of accidents that you see more often in MotoGP now, and also those are the quote-unquote preferred accidents, because the high ones are essentially, that is when like the drivers catapulted over, and that is way more dangerous. And I believe there was a change made to the bike that is preventing that from happening as often as it used to. But I don't know exactly what the change was. I just remember reading about it.
Yeah, so overall, I thought for my first experience, it was a lot of fun. There was less overtaking than I expected. I thought there would be a lot more on-track action, but it was nonetheless still super exciting. I also like that it's short.
Yeah.
You know, the sprint race was 11 laps. The main event ended up being only 21 laps because they had to redo the warm-up lap because there was a delay.
Yeah, there was essentially someone who held up the start because there was something went wrong with his bike.
Yeah, Raul Fernandez with Trackhouse, he ended up having to wave it down, and everybody had to stop. He ended up getting on his reserve bike.
Yes.
And then he started the warm-up lap from the pit lanes, but then started the race from the back, from position 23, essentially.
And then he ended up coming 15th.
No, he ended up DNFing.
Oh, he DNF'd? Oh, so the other Trackhouse came in 15th. Okay.
Yeah, so Raul, he ended up having to DNF. He ended up in the pits, and he just couldn't continue, which is such a bummer, because I also thought it was so cool, which I had told you, which I found out during the sprint race, is that Trackhouse is a brand new team. Essentially, if I understood it correctly, the owner of it, or one of the owners, he saw a MotoGP race last year in Austin, Texas. He's American. He saw it and he's like, well, I want a team. So he created a team. Like, it's with Abrilla. So it's like, there's big names behind it, and there's a lot of sponsorships, of course, but it's kind of nuts that he, within 6+ months, he created his own MotoGP team, and they're two riders on a track.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how it goes, right?
Yes.
But it's kind of wild that some people have like money like that out there. But yeah, I think it's really cool. So the sprint race as well as the main event was won by last year's defending champion. Oh no, only the main event, right?
Yeah. So the sprint race was won by Jorge Martin.
Jorge.
One of the commentators kept saying Jorge, but yeah, I would say Jorge Martin.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then Brad Binder was the second place. He's the guy from South Africa.
Yeah,
and
correct.
then the driver, Alexei Espargaro. He's the one that ended up in third, and apparently he was also a favorite for the main event. However, he ended up in 8th at the end, which was, I guess, maybe unexpected. But then, yes, last year, or the last two rider champion winner,
Francesca Bagnaia.
He ended up winning the main event by also, like, he led it from the beginning all the way to the end. He had, like, his lead kept varying, so Binder was quite on him. Yeah,
but he was like steadily increasing.
Yeah, there was no like real fight for it. So whenever he noticed, like, oh, he's coming a little closer, he stepped on it a little bit more, but he seemed fairly comfortable. I also was really interested in watching Pedro Acosta, who's the rookie on this year's track, because he did so well, or he did well in the sprint race. I forgot what position he ended up in. But then in the main event, he ended up, at one point, he was up by 4th, like almost competing for the podium. But then there was an issue. The commentators were guessing it was grip, and then also like the pump handle or something like that. There were some issues because they saw him changing grip on some of the straights or adjusting things. So it might have not just been tire wear or maybe inexperience, but also like a technical thing.
It might have been like a combination of both, because like he was definitely pushing, and so that led to some cool overtakes. But yeah, he also seemed to be, that is the scary thing also with MotoGP. They're flying down these like the track so fast, and then they're like, because the grip is giving out, so they're shaking just a little bit. So that's quite intense.
It is, and I feel like that also makes it exciting, because as the race continues, you see it more and more happening here and there, and it's like, is the rider going to be able to catch the bike, or is it going to slip away from them? Yeah. So I thought it was definitely interesting. I'm curious to see more and different tracks. Marc Marquez is back this year, which
he ended 4th.
Yeah, right? He ended up 4th. So I'm excited to see him, because he's on a new bike and he's back from injury, and I mean, he's one of the bigger names in the sport, and we've missed his era since this is our first MotoGP season. But it seems to be an interesting one. And even a commentator said this seems to be one of the most exciting era of MotoGP as of late.
Yeah.
Not saying it has never been this exciting, but it's definitely been, or it's getting to be really exciting.
Yeah, and it's cool that we're right there with it, you know?
Yes, yeah.
So then let's move on to the other
Two-wheel.
two-wheel racing that we watched, which was, of course, AMA Supercross. So this week they were in Birmingham.
Yes, Birmingham, Alabama.
We still had, for the 250SX, we still had the East Coast guys.
East Coast boys.
Exactly. And then 450 per usual.
Yes.
So we did not watch the heats.
No, but when we started tuning in for the last chance qualifier, we did hear about what had happened in one of the 250 heats.
Correct.
Where Deegan and Hammaker bumped together, right?
That was
from
actually,
the start, which
looked actually pretty bad. I'm happy to know that Hammaker wasn't injured.
Yes.
And then he clearly had a really, really great race. Actually, let's switch this over. He ended up having a really, really good race.
Yes.
And that makes me happy because if you go back and rewatch the fall, it looked quite bad. And then I feel like with Austin just getting injured from having a bad fall.
Yeah.
You know, it was good to see that he was able to, you know, get back on the bike, and the bike also didn't really take that much, seemed like, damage.
Yeah, I mean, because he had to go into the last chance qualifier, Hayden Deegan as well. They both, of course, made it, not of course, but they both ended up making it into the main event for the 250 as well, which was also really interesting. It seemed like a technically difficult track from what they were saying. There were no hoops this time, though, which was really interesting. This was our first time with a track without it. So that was, I feel like for some of the riders it was good because some people like hoops or some are good at it versus others are not as much. So it changed maybe the dynamic a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a really fun race yet again.
And also what was really surprising, what happened during the race, during the all races, there were ruts. I'm just making this joke because like every week when there's a race, the commentators, and it's like, yeah, and at the end of the, you know, towards the end of the race, there's going to be really thick ruts.
Yeah.
And it's going to be really, really difficult, you know. It's like every week, and it's like, it's not surprising news, you know, but they always make it seem like this is unexpected.
Oh, yes, that's
you know,
very true.
or at least it comes off like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if it's maybe more common at certain tracks. I mean, we're still new to the sport, but it's definitely something we noticed, that they keep talking about the ruts like it's such a new thing, but it seems to be an every time race thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes the race more difficult for the riders and also interesting as a viewer, because if they're stuck in certain ruts, and then also passing can be difficult, and changing your lane or best approach. But it's definitely been a funny kind of story.
I mean, and they did say that this track was apparently a little bit more difficult to overtake due to those ruts. And then you obviously had the choice to sometimes go the long way to carry more speed, or but we did still see a lot of really good overtaking.
Yes, agreed.
And then we had this week in the 250SX, very, very exciting. Tom Vial won again. He won 2 weeks in a row now, or 2 races in a row.
And he also won his heat race this weekend. So he had like a double whammy of wins essentially this weekend, which is really nice.
Yeah.
That I feel like he's getting maybe into a groove. And I'm not sure if he was prior, but I feel like he seems to be maybe coming forward as one of potential the contender for the title.
I mean, if you win 2 back-to-back, that's pretty impressive.
Which I think is really cool. It was also nice to see Jalik Swole. He was also competing very much at the front for a while, but then he was
third at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he was
third.
He fought his way up to third, and then he bumped him and Jaimes. Had a little bump together.
Yeah, he got checked and then he flew. It was a little unfortunate, but I think it was like 6 minutes to go at that point. So we were like, anything could still happen, which it does. And then he ended up falling off. So he ended up coming 6th, which is still, you know, it would have been really awesome if a Triumph bike would have made it on the podium. I know, because
there was definitely a moment at the beginning, but it was the beginning, so you know anything can happen.
Yeah.
That we thought, and even the commentators were like, "Ooh, what if Triumph actually makes it onto podium with their first season?"
Yeah.
And I mean, he has been driving really well, I would say. And also one of the things which I thought was really interesting, that some of the privateer teams were doing actually better, or they were standing out a little bit more. And then our boy
Oh.
Anstey, he unfortunately couldn't finish the race.
Yeah.
He was the one with the red plate up till this weekend. And unfortunately, there was some issue with the bike. And he seems just like such a sweet guy. He was so polite about, I mean, he was trying not to say anything bad on TV, of course, but then he was still like very protective of his team. And it's just kind of crazy like that the small teams like his, and then I think Cody Schock is one of the privateer teams as well, where they only have like maybe like 5 people on the team, versus the manufacturer or constructor teams, they have like 15 to 20 people. So it does make it different at times. I don't know if that had anything to do with Anstey's result this week necessarily, but it shows how much work goes into it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I'm sure it probably affected it some way. Maybe if there was more personnel, someone would have had the time to see or maybe anticipate a mistake or the technical failure. But these are obviously all speculations. There's no way to know. You know?
Of course.
He was a little devastated for DNFing, because obviously that means he gets no points, and he dropped quite a lot of points in the championship. And considering how tight it is, it will be very difficult to make that up. But it is really cool still to see that, once again, a non-big team has made it so far.
And also a driver who's considered a little bit older, especially for being in the 250s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not over yet. It was definitely going to be difficult. But, I mean, the race isn't over until the race is over, baby.
Exactly. And then, so Cameron McAdoo ended up coming second. And then his teammate, Seth Hamaker.
Hamaker, yes.
He ended up coming third. It was overall like really solid performance from everyone. I thought maybe for a second there might be another battle between McAdoo and Hamaker. Am I saying this right?
Yeah, Hamaker. I tried to pay attention yesterday because I keep saying Haymaker, but it's they said Hamaker.
And because they were like barely a second off from each other, and that like you sleep in one corner and someone's gonna catch you.
100%. And I also want to point out Pierce Brown again, because Pierce Brown has been up there. He's not necessarily, I don't remember him necessarily being on the podium for the East Coast boys, but he's always up in the middle. So he's ranked quite high. He's like a Ferrandis in the 450s.
Exactly.
He's like a sneaky guy, because he's third at the moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's been up there competing. He's just not necessarily in all of the action, or there's always so much other action happening. So he's not really there. But I just find it funny that we still see his name up there. He still got interviewed, of course, deservedly so, because I mean, he's third and not by only 5 points behind Tom Vial, who's currently the leader.
So he's only 5 points off. And then, like they said, it has happened. I think it's very rarely that someone wins the championship without actually winning a race, but that's like Carlos Sainz senior styles in the Dakar, right?
I mean, they did say 1997 Sydney Ferry was the last champ to win the championship without actually winning a race. So I feel like a lot of times it is consistency, and that's what they were saying as well. You have to do consistently good races, because so much can happen that you could potentially win the championship without ever winning a race.
I mean, I would hope that if Pierce Brown wins it, he at least could also win a race, because I'm sure it's like it's a nice thing to do. But hey, who knows? You know, we still have plenty of races this upcoming or this season, so I'm excited for it.
Yes.
And now moving on to the 450 SX. I am very happy actually about the results, because my boy Kenny came in third.
Yes, so excited for him.
Very excited. He was saying that he did a lot of practicing his starts in the off, and they're getting better, but it's still not ideal, because I think after the start he was still pretty far back.
Yeah, it's like, but he always fights his way up, which is
nice. But it's like he makes his life harder, because like once some of these guys have so much, like there's such a gap, it's even harder to make it up. Or if you like, he went on the like chase and then he chased down Chase Exton too, is one of the people he passed, and then he as I said, he made it into third place. But then at some point, I'm sure like your arms are heavy, your hands are probably getting tired, and then he didn't have enough pace to catch Cooper Webb, who ended up coming second, and of course Jed Lawrence, who won again
the race. Yes, it's 2 times in a row now. The first time this season that somebody won 2 times in a row,
and he won his 4th race.
Is
right?
this fourth or is this third?
I think it's his fourth already.
It's fourth? Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, because he won the first, he won Daytona, he won this one, and then he won one other one. I forgot which one he won.
Oh, yeah? Okay, well,
yeah.
I mean, that's good for him. I mean, he led the whole race. There was talks about whether or not he can finish the race.
He had again a little incident.
Did he?
I think he had like, he didn't fall off, but he had like again, like where it's like it looked really quickly
shaky. I mean, they were even talking about that. The commentators talked to his dad, and they said that it's a lot more tricky, I guess, for him to finish or focus all the way through for like an easier race because it becomes a little bit more muscle memory. And then if it's muscle memory, you might not focus quite as much, which I totally get. So then it's even easier to make mistakes. This time it was a little bit more intricate track, so I felt like his focus was there, which was really nice. So it was nice to see. I mean, he won clearly. There was a lot of action happening behind. I mean, Cooper was there for most of the race, I feel. If I'm not mistaken, Cooper Webb. No. He was like in second.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
There was a lot of action happening with Justin Cooper. There was a chance that he might make his first podium, which would have been really nice. I was rooting for him as well. It was either for him or Ken, or both. Really both. Because it would have been nice, but it's also nice to see that Chase Sexton is doing better this time round. I mean, there's so many big names in the top 10 4 to 450 that we've learning about, and of course we're rooting for everybody. Like Eli ended up coming in 7th. 6th was Jason Anderson, which he had also some ups and downs in the race. He ended up colliding with somebody.
Actually, yes, and then in the heat race, him and Jet bumped into each other.
Oh, that's where it was.
And then he got mad in the moment at Jet, but looking at the footage, Jet really couldn't do anything. Jet ended up actually falling because he was clipped and not because he did the clipping.
Oh, right, because it was right at the beginning. Yes,
correct. Yeah, it was like first corner, but it didn't affect them because both of them made it obviously into the main event.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go through the lucky losers / last chance qualifiers. But yeah. Sorry, I was trying to see. Yeah, so I would like to actually see Chase win a race this year, because he's made it second. He hasn't made it onto the top step, and I think it would be cool for the defending champion to at least get one in.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I also don't want Jet to like win everything. I want there to be some kind of competition because I don't want it to be like a Verstappen or like somebody winning everything. I still want it to be interesting. I mean, it was still an interesting race. There was lots of action happening in different positions of the track, which is fun. But I want there to be some action for first place as well.
Yeah, now seeing also Jason Anderson, he has this thing what he's been doing the last couple of races I've seen where he wakes up towards the end of the race and then he goes on the
goes on a charge.
It's like for the first it seems like couple of like first 5-10 minutes, he's kind of like more cruising in the back. I don't know if he's saving up his energy because he's maybe like I can't do this the whole race.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know. But then he woke up and then he did make up some places. I was also happy to see Barsha in the points. Malcolm ended up coming 10th. So he still at least got some points in there too, which is cool. We haven't seen a lot from Aaron recent in the last couple of races.
I mean, he's clearly still a crowd favorite because apparently somebody got proposed in front of him. Nice. During one of the fan events in Birmingham, which was really nice. I mean, he's clearly a crowd favorite. But yeah, he hasn't been in the mix at the top for the last, I think, 2 or 3 races now, which I hope it's maybe just a dip in the season. I mean, there's still a lot more races to come, so I'm excited to keep watching it. But we'll see.
Oh, and then I don't think we brought up this up before, but Hunter Lawrence is currently out due to injury. Yes. He injured himself in practice. So very unfortunate that he couldn't participate because even though he's obviously in his brother's shadow, he has actually been consistent.
Yes.
He's always, I think, been finishing almost every time in top 10s.
Yeah, I think so.
So he's been very consistent. So it's so I am wishing him a fast recovery. And then I also see here on the list, Dean Wilson, an English racer, is also out for injury, but I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's a Scottish racer.
Oh yeah, sorry. I just saw United Kingdom. My apologies.
Yeah, because I know there's
no
a difference.
offense. Definitely Scottish, not English. My apologies.
But yeah, I mean, obviously we wish everybody who's out due to illness a fast recovery, because we want to see everybody on the track, because it also makes it super interesting. And I can't wait for next time.
Yes. So now moving on to Formula One.
Ooh, boy.
So I only saw the start and I saw the last 10 laps because I was at work.
Yes.
And like they started the race at like 9, which is when my work officially like we open up to the public. So I was like, I have to use the restroom, guys. And then I was like watching it on my phone. I was just like, let me just see the start real quick.
Yeah,
right?
no, of course.
And then later on when I took my break, this wasn't timed, it was just a good timing. I get a 15-minute break, so I was able to see the last 10 laps of the race, which 10 laps is more than 15 minutes, so don't tell my boss. I don't think she cares. But yeah, so I will say you're going to fill in the gaps. The race was definitely, without a doubt, more interesting than Bahrain.
Oh, 100%.
Because we also like had a safety car and stuff like that. I will say once again, though, I thought that the start was a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, I feel like part of it is a relief that nobody knocks out immediately.
And
I mean,
that's not what I want. I just want someone, like, I'm waiting for someone to, like, jump. Like, and then just, like, catch, like, 3 racers off and, like, jump a bunch of positions or, like, create something, you know? I don't want anyone to, like, get into an accident, but it just seems like they just all stay in their own, you know, position.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, we did have some action right from the beginning, like warm-up lap. Gasly is like, oh, there's some trouble with the gearbox.
Yeah, but talking about Gasly before you move on from that. So his 6th gear, he couldn't shift into that. But apparently he said in a post-race interview, he said that actually after qualifying, because he didn't make it into qualifying too, they already found that there was already damage on the car. So he already had damage going into qualifying, which also makes me a little bit concerned that why did no one know about this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he picked it up during qualifying, but I guess that impacted his racing. And then it's just so unfortunate that you don't even get to do 1 lap.
No laps. Like he did a warm-up lap and then it was immediately on after.
And then you have to now wait 2 weeks. Oh, what a bummer, man.
Yes. I mean, it was an interesting race, obviously not with Max in the front. He raced his own race. We didn't really see him. It was a fun beginning with Leclerc because he defended his position at the beginning against Perez, and I love that he like fought it. You know, I felt like I saw some really like fight in him, which was really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he did fight for it at the beginning, but then I mean the Red Bull is still so much faster, so he eventually was passed by him, but we didn't really see much of Max, Sergio, or Charles for majority of the race because there was not much to see because they were driving their own race. There was some gap between all of 3. They were not competing with each other even. The 3 of them were in their own world essentially for majority of the race, but there was still some action that happened. Of course, we had Lance go out in the first couple of laps. Because he DNF'd, he clipped the wall, then ran into the other wall, and it was this whole thing where he said over the radio, I hit the wall, and then his engineer was like, oh, can you bring it back? And he's like, no, I'm in the wall. Which is funny to hear, but the commentators were even saying that it's like the engineers might not have seen the screen. They're looking at all the other screens that they have. So I get it, but it's just still funny.
I will say this, like in my mind, it's like, why isn't that all the screens flashing red? That there's something wrong with the car. But also, this is not the first time we've seen this in F1 where someone's like, oh, can you bring it back? And then and I think then like the driver's like, no. And then the race engineer probably sees like, oh, this is, you know, what happened or whatever. So this is not the first time this happened. I will say I was very glad to see right away that he didn't hurt his hand. I know. I was a little worried about it because like last year before at the beginning of the season, he broke his hand. Yes. And he ended up having surgery. He did participate in all races, I believe. He didn't skip one. I don't remember if he skipped the first one or if he started immediately. I think he started immediately. Also, Daniel Ricciardo, he went into the wall right into his first race and he hurt his hand. So there's easily something... could be injured when they
bump into a wall, especially at like those street circuits where there's not a lot of runoff.
Well, I think it's a snapping of the steering wheel.
Oh, yeah.
That but yeah, he was holding it tight. When I was watching the replay, I saw it, but I was like, that was I was glad to see that he was safe.
Yes,
you know?
but that definitely bunched the crowds back together a little bit, which caused a very long DRS strain with the midfield, which was interesting. There was a lot of exciting. Some exciting back and forth between Hamilton and Piastri for a while, which was cool to see because Hamilton and Lando didn't pit.
Yes, during the safety car.
Exactly. And Joe also didn't pit. I think those three were the main ones that didn't pit. So they were a little bit on a different strategy. They were hoping maybe for another safety car so they can pit a little bit later, which is smart. It's very likely for a street race, especially in Jeddah, because it is such an intricate track. It didn't work out for them, but there was a lot of great action happening with Magnussen, Albon, Ocon. There's a lot of back and forth. Unfortunately, I mean, Magnussen definitely got screwed over.
So before we get into that, I will say, though, both Hamilton and Norris said in their post-race interview that they were happy that they tried the different or they offset the strategy because, first of all, it gives you also more insight into the car and try different data and see what it works.
Yes.
So I'm glad to see that both of them were like, I'm okay with trying it because right now all we're trying to do is get faster.
Yeah.
Because it's like I saw a statistic that I think the Mercedes now is more off pace at the beginning of the season than it was last year, and sometimes I'm like how does it happen that the car gets worse, or is like everyone getting better and they're not? Like, I don't get it. Like, I understand that there's a cost gap and they can't just throw money at it, but it seems like you were doing better and now it's worse again, and it's the same thing for McLaren. Like, you're not competing right now with the top guys.
And then, like you said, even we talked about it, like Mercedes now is faster in the straights, but then McLaren is in like the corners and stuff, so that's why it was so difficult for Piastri to pass Hamilton at
and
one
vice
point,
versa,
and vice versa, because they kind of balanced each other out in this track in particular.
So the Mercedes is fast on the straights and then the lower and mid corners, and then in the high or the high speed corners, that's when the McLaren really shines. Probably also in the mid ones.
Yeah.
So it kind of offsets, but it is so that's why Piastri wasn't really able to make a move. He was behind Hamilton for like 20 laps. I think he tried to do overtake.
He really tried. We saw it, and then he had DRS every single time. But even with DRS, the Mercedes was just so fast. Like, he got closer, but there was really, really a moment for him to really have the opportunity to pass. And Piastri's a good driver. Yeah, he would risk it. I mean, not risk it, but like try it, and also in smart ways.
To be fair, he did make some mistakes, so he ended up going deep. So that's why he was never able to make it stick. But then also that ended up not being able Hamilton to overtake Norris later on at the end, because like he wasn't fast enough to catch him. He did ended up getting DRS, but because in the high speeds corner the McLaren just takes off. There was just no contention, which, like, it's fair, but it's just unfortunate, but that both cars are not where they need to be.
No, I mean, it's definitely, I feel like right now it's Red Bull, its own world, then there's Ferrari, and then Mercedes and McLaren are competing with each other at the moment, and then it's Aston, and then...
Well, the Astons this time actually were a little bit better than the other two.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I feel like still they're... it's not quite sure yet where they are. Yeah. Even Fernando was saying, like, he was nervous about going into the full race. Like, he has quali speed, but for the full race, he's not certain quite yet. Yeah. But then, so let's talk about Magnussen. I felt like, and I think many feel like he was screwed over. Like, the penalties that he got, yeah, sure, maybe because he cost some, he pushed Albon a little bit into the wall. Albon did say he felt like it was like a racing incident, so he wasn't like hurt about it, because neither of them DNF'd or were out of the race. Both were able to continue without even adding a stop. So he got a 10-second penalty for that, and then he ended up overtaking Yuki at one point, and then he went wide or cut the corner, and then he got another 10-second penalty.
So I would probably say the first one was pretty intense, but the second one, I rewatched the footage, and essentially Yuki's coming around and he's really going deep, and so he's not making that corner, and then he just stayed in front of Yuki. So I do agree that, like, you technically have to make the overtake and then if you go the next corner, you go wide, and then it's fine. But because you overtook that same corner, I get that.
But I feel like 10-second penalties, I feel like those are very harsh, because even they were talking about it after the race that yes, you could give a penalty for both instances, but the precedent is to give 5-second penalties, not 10-second penalties.
Yeah, I was surprised about that too. I think my thing is because then what Magnussen did, right, is he ended up just holding up the back end of the...
Which was so great.
Like, he played the team game, and then Nico also thanked him for it, because Nico was able to come in 10th.
Yeah, and got a point.
Exactly. They were talking about essentially, like, they are just waiting for one of the top 5 teams, someone to DNF.
Yeah.
And that gives them the opportunity to sneak in and get a point, which is really actually sad. It's
that there's no other chance for them to get a point unless, one of the top 5 teams DNFs. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, but I also understand, because some people were saying like, oh, that's not cool and whatever. But like, Magnussen is doing exactly what is expected of him, of the team, and he's doing the right thing, right? Because the thing about it is also, I always sometimes don't agree with the F1 or the FIA penalties, because it's like people get penalized, for example, after qualifying for doing something during qualifying, but like for example Bottas, right, he ended up getting held up. 2 cars were on the ideal racing line when he was in Q1, and then he ended up missing Q2 by like 0.0029 or something like that, so by a minimal fraction, because he had to go around those cars. And they ended up getting, I think, if they got a penalty, it was afterwards. But it's like the driver who was already hindered already is facing the consequences, so that punishment needs to come sooner. And if the punishments are just like, hey, I'm gonna give you a 10-second penalty, this guy already has a 10-second penalty, so he has a 20-second, he's not gonna care about his race, so he's gonna do whatever he needs to do. So if you want, either you need to change up the penalties, the way that you're applying them, or you're just going to be like, okay, if the team or the racers want to handle like that, then that's their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that the punishment was very harsh. Good on Magnussen for playing the team game and fighting and really helping Nico and Haas to earn a point, because that's so much worth nowadays for those teams.
Especially because it's lots and lots of money that's on the line too.
For sure. And I agree with what you're saying, that like if somebody has a 10-second penalty, like what does another 10-second penalty do? So maybe then they would have to do like a drive-through penalty, because that could cause a little bit more because then they can't play the team game maybe necessarily. Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like, he's like, I'm not gonna give back the position to Yuki because I'm gonna get penalized, but my race is already shot, right?
Yes.
So if you want to prevent this type of thought process, then you need to change the way the penalty is applied.
Yes.
I will say also, however, really good on Yuki, because he actually said, he was like, yes, I was overtaken, and he was kind of like off the stuff like that, but he was also like, in the end, it was also on me for not, first of all, giving him the opportunity to overtake or make that move, and then also not being able to overtake him again. I mean, to be fair, also that track is quite difficult to make passes on. So, and then they don't have like the best cars anyways, right?
Yeah.
But it's good on Yuki for him to like, realize, it was also on me. If I'm gonna let a guy pass me, then I need to overtake him and not let him hold up the whole race,
For sure. But before we move on, we have one more big thing to talk about for F1. As you guys probably already know, Carlos Sainz ended up not competing this weekend because he had to get his appendix removed, which is crazy. It's the second time now since we've really gotten into F1 again that we've had this. Albon had his appendix removed within the last
2022
couple of seasons. Yeah, and then now Carlos Sainz. So then, of course, they had to find a last-minute replacement for him, and then they ended up bringing on Oliver Behrman from he's an F2 driver currently. He was an F3 champion previously, and it's only his second season in F2. He did get pole for his main event race. However,
in F2.
In F2, but then he got called up to the big guys, and so he couldn't compete in F2 this weekend, which makes, of course, sense. So he first got into the car in FP3, which for just barely an hour, and then he had to go straight into qualifying. He did really well in qualifying. I mean, I can't imagine the pressure or what goes through somebody's mind, and also the physical task to take up a F1 car all of a sudden. Like, yes, of course he's fit because he already races F2 and he's preparing to be eventually F1, but it happened probably much sooner than expected. Like, okay, he did drive a Haas F1 car twice last year during FP1, which is, so he has some experience, but still, like, unprepared going into it. Qualifying, he did really well. He made it into Q2, almost kicking out Hamilton to make it into Q3. So it was really close. Very good on him for being that good with only like an hour in the car prior to it. Then during the race, he did so well. He did get them, I think he had the soft tires to start with. Yeah, he was one of the few people on the soft tires because his team wanted to give him a little bit more speed right from the beginning to make the start a little bit easier on him. So he had a good start. It was, like you said, there was not much that happened in the start. There was no accidents or anything, which was nice. So he did really well, and he ended up in 7th place.
Yeah, he did really amazing.
Rookie race.
Absolutely. And it's awesome.
With points, I mean, yeah, absolutely incredible. He did really well. I mean, it must have been so exhausting. He was also talking about, like, of course, that his shoulders and back and stuff is hurting. Of course, the seat was made for him.
No, because it's also so last minute. It's not like you had a chance to maybe get a seat done. I don't know how they usually handle it.
I don't know either, but it was just like, how impressive.
But it's nice to see someone come to F1, especially because we don't have a rookie this year, and also do really well, and then hopefully potentially get a seat in a couple of years, you know?
Yeah, not only that, but I'm hoping that will maybe open the eyes to some of the teams and give rookies opportunities. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, he did excellent. Like, yes, of course, it's not every rookie that can do that well. And he's, I think, only the 3rd teenager to earn points in a Grand Prix. Which is also, like, it's kind of crazy. But, I mean, yeah, hats off to him. I also love to see the relationship between him and his father, which was so cute. How supportive the dad was. How, I mean, internet famous the dad now is, just because he was so passionate and in it and worried and so cute. And then afterwards, how they, like, hugged each other and a little kiss on the cheek, which was so cute. I mean, they just have this, it seems like, very beautiful relationship. And even the dad said, like, don't worry, just enjoy it. And Vasseur said, just, like, bring it home.
Yeah, like, don't be a hero. Like, no one is expecting you to win. No one is expecting you to fight for a podium. But, you know, bring the car back in one piece and hopefully make some points in the Constructors' Championship. And he accomplished both. He had an incident-free race, you know.
And he did some overtaking. He battled Nico for a while. And then he was able to pass him eventually, which was also cool to see. He did say he got caught up behind Nico a little bit longer than he wanted to. But Nico has experience.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Yes, he drives a Haas, but he knows how to defend. And
of course. And you still have to make the pass. You know, yes, he's in a Ferrari.
Yes.
He's in a better car, much faster car and stuff like that. But in the end, you still have to make the overtake. And he ended up doing that.
Yes.
So that's really awesome. And, you know, once again, it's just really cool to see a rookie come in and do well. I know we had that before. We had Liam last year come in and he did really well. And I'm really hoping that maybe next year we'll get to see maybe 2 rookies on the track, on the track, on the grid. I know it will be unfortunate because, of course, if there's new people coming, that means people need to leave too.
I know, and I don't even know who we should say goodbye to.
You know, like, I'm glad I'm not in the decision.
No, for sure. I do want to say, and I told you this because I watched the post-race interviews because I always think you can get some insight from them as well. And then, of course, they interviewed Ollie Behrman and also some of the other drivers, of course, Charles as well, about Ollie. And then there's Jack Donahue there, the Alpine reserve driver. And of course, he's hoping for an F1 seat, and everybody's talking Ollie up and like, oh, he's going to be in F1 sooner than later. And then Jack is just standing there. I mean, he was a good sport and he asked questions and he does such a great job in the interviews. But I was just like, guys, he also wants a seat. And we know that there's only very few available. Like, a lot of the drivers who are in F2 never get to drive an F1 car because they don't get the opportunity. Not. I mean, there's only 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for now, hopefully we'll have more. I mean, soon we'll have 22 and stuff, but I mean, there's not going to be.
You think so?
maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Could be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry you said it with such certainty and was like, oh, you got Andretti news?
I mean, I feel like we'll maybe have 22 eventually, but I don't think it will go much higher than that because also, I mean, the cars are so big. You have to consider the tracks, the pit lanes.
I mean,
and
that's
all those
what they're
things.
saying.
That's what they say, yeah.
Because the FIA says yes, F1 says no. I don't know. I'm like, more people, more racing, more people on the track. Let's do it.
And more constructors. Like, give it, yeah.
And I mean, I would love to also get a constructor to, that is also more competitive,
Yeah.
Nothing against the 5 teams that are not competitive, right?
Yes.
But I'm hoping maybe with Audi coming in that, the Kick Sauber team will become more competitive. I don't know. I'm just like, I want more competition.
But I also like what you said yesterday, because we talked about it, of course, a little bit after the race, that you said you would be interested in having maybe the top 15 teams earning points.
Yes, I was just saying this because I thought it was very like sobering to think about that. The only way the non-top 5 teams can get points is if one of the top 5 teams DNFs, right? And it's just really,
or has a unlucky race, or for whatever other reason.
Yeah, there's something going on so that they're not able to compete at. But it's unfortunate that that's the only way they can do it,
because there's so much competition between those 5 teams also. So it's like they would deserve it.
It's very unusual, but I was saying it would. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it right now. Maybe also with the regulation changes, because obviously the teams are now, especially the smaller teams, are not going to spend a lot of money on the cars and stuff like that. But I know, like in MotoGP and stuff like that, you can get points all the way until 15th place. I don't know. I think maybe F1 did it at some point, and I'm not saying just switch it up, but it's just like, it would be nice if it, to make it maybe a little bit more competitive, and that's not just the top 10, the same riders or drivers all the time.
Oh, I agree. But so we talked about our rookie, Ollie Behrman, and what an amazing job that he did. But of course, he came from F2, and we told you guys last week, and F2 has been so exciting. Highly recommended. I mean, we didn't get to watch the sprint race this weekend, but we watched the main event this weekend, and my gosh.
I mean, in F2,
much exciting.
Yes, I'm sure maybe in
how
F.
Much exciting.
How much exciting? How much exciting? But I'm sure also like in F3, I'm sure it was exciting. But we watched the F2, and then later on we'll talk about F1 Academy as well. An incredibly eventful races. You had everything from, of course, DNFs to safety cars to lots and lots of overtaking. There's so much overtaking going all the time. They're constantly battling. Of course, having those safety cars come in, of course, bunches up the field again. But even so, there's so much overtaking going on at all times. The interesting thing is now also Behrman has points in Formula 1. He doesn't have any points in Formula 2.
That's true, because his first race in Bahrain was not quite as, he didn't go quite as well. But
then this time he got onto the pole, but he wasn't able to, compete, obviously, because he was busy racing racing in F1. I will say, though, and it stayed eventful all the way up until the last lap.
We had no idea who was gonna. I mean, I didn't anticipate Fittipaldi, and so Fittipaldi ended up winning it. I mean, also great for him, because he said he's been through a tough time. They lost his uncle recently, also Formula F1 driver. Yeah, exactly. So it was like a beautiful thing for him to win, but he was not in the front for the majority of the race. Like, he was in the top group, but at first we had like Miney, of course, he started on first. He ended up trying to compete up there. Crawford and Cordell were up there for a minute. There was a lot of changing. People were also on different strategies, because you do have to pit once or change tire compound once, at least during those 28 laps even. But there was lots of movement.
There was also, because there was multiple safety cars, there was also like, I think teams were also kind of like, oh, when should we make when should we, because
it's strategy.
Exactly. They were trying to figure it out, because was it Correa right, who came on 14th, he was in the front for a while. He led the race, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because his team was like, okay, just don't come into the pits.
Yeah.
Don't come into the pits. And then he was in first place, and for a while he was leading the race, but then there was no more safety car, and so he ended up having to pit. He ended up coming 14th. But it's like, it was very, very interesting. And then Fittipaldi, his overtake to get into first place was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It was one of the best overtakes I've seen probably this year.
That one was really good. And then also the race for third, Hauger came out of nowhere. He was in the front group, but it was him, Crawford, and Cordial. So the three of them it was not a photo finish, but the three of them came, like, next to each other up to the finish line, and then Hauger just snatched it away. He was not necessarily in my purview for it, or like I didn't think he would make it, but what an exciting, I mean, from the beginning to the end, so much excitement, so much overtaking. I mean, I couldn't have guessed that. Yeah, as I said, that Fittipaldi would have won.
I mean, in his jump to the first place, everyone was very surprised by it, because he jumped from 4th to 1. He overtook 2 guys in one corner, and then he was like, goodbye, and he just took off.
Yeah, and he did have quite a little bit of a lead at the end.
Almost 8 seconds.
Yeah, he made up a bunch of time. So I mean, highly recommend it. You'll also be able to watch it on F1 TV. It's so much fun to watch. It's only about an hour long, so it's a little bit shorter than, I mean, a lot shorter than an actual F1 race.
So it's very easy to watch.
Yeah, but there's so much. I mean, you can't have it on just on the side. It's like, there's so much that happens.
No.
I mean, also going immediately into F1 Academy, we watched the second race of the weekend, and it's even a shorter race. So it's not even...
They did 13 laps. I think this also comes down to it being a very long track. So I think tracks that are a little shorter, they will do more laps. But yeah, they did 13 laps. We had like multiple safety cars also.
Yes.
Also to keep in mind, F1 Academy, they all race just like in Formula 4 in the same cars.
Also Formula 2 does as well. It's all the same cars.
Oh, okay, yes. So all the same cars. It's also very interesting in F1 Academy, you have a Puma car.
Yeah, I mean, the sponsors are really interesting. Like, yes, of course, we know that 10 of the drivers are sponsored by an F1 team, but then you have, Puma, you have Charlotte Tilbury, the makeup company, sponsoring another car. So it's really cool to see the different types of sponsors. I also love seeing this year, finally, they're getting more media attention. They're a lot more involved in F1 TV. I mean, it's on F1 TV. It's on the socials. It's on YouTube. And it's like also like post-race interviews. The 2 of the women were there. So it's like really nice to see that there's some attention finally happening.
Also, people were hating on the F1 intro. The F1 Academy intro is lit.
Oh, it's
much better. So much better. They were like, okay, I think maybe they're like, okay, we'll do F1 Academy, stuff like that. And then they're like, oh my God, F1 starts next week. We need to do the other one too. They just forgot about it because like it's not very good.
Oh no, the F1 Academy intro is so fun because it shows them like serious, but it also shows some personality. And it's really nice. I really enjoy it.
Yes, it is. And it's also like, once again, really exciting racing because it's a lot of overtaking, lots and lots of back and forth. And we had Dorian
Pin?
Oh, Dorian Pin?
I think Pin.
Pin.
That's what they've been saying. Yeah.
So she's the driver technically for the Mercedes team.
Yeah. So Prima Racing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she won the first race, and she also won the second race.
Technically, yes.
But then Mercedes did something incredibly bizarre.
Prima
Racing, right?
Yeah.
Did something incredibly bizarre, and you knew what was happening. I didn't know what was happening, so I watched it, and then so essentially, Doreen makes it through the checkered line, but her racing engineer never told her that the race was over, and I don't think he communicated to her either that she was on the last lap. So she went full out for another almost 2 laps before she was shown the red flag, and then she ended up getting a penalized 20-second penalty, and so she ended up coming 9th.
It's so frustrating.
And I get that people will say like, oh, why didn't she see the checkered flag and stuff like that, but I can tell you from someone who races on iRacing, right? And of course, like we're nowhere near the same level. She's a professional racer and stuff like that. But I'm just focused on the track, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even in a real car, right? I'm just focused on that. And then if you don't have someone communicating to you, because in iRacing, you have someone telling me, oh, you know, you're in the last lap, you've been shown the white flag, and now you're checkered flag. Good job, blah, 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 blah. And she might have been so focused, you know, and then that they went and everyone in the pits celebrated with each other, but they didn't celebrate with the person who actually got the one, you know, for the team. Absolutely mind-boggling. Also incredibly frustrating for what a stupid mistake.
I know, seriously. I really don't blame her at all. I feel like even some of the F1 drivers who were asked about it at the end, they even said, like, you don't pay attention to it. You have your head down, you focus, especially on a track like Jeddah, which is so intricate. And then, I mean, also when you see the flag waved, it was quite up. It was not like down in the viewpoint, and you know they're so low.
Yes.
So, and I'm like, I also, like, some people even said, like, she shouldn't have gotten a penalty. The team should have gotten a fine because it was, I feel like, more their mistake than it was hers.
And she's also a very experienced racer.
Yeah.
So, like, she has won the Ferrari Challenge Europe. She's won a race in Formula 4 UAE. So she has had success in other sports. So she's an experienced racer.
Yeah.
So I like the only way this could have happened is that no one communicated to her that she was on the last lap and then that the race was over. That she was probably in the zone because she was dominant. She at no point was I was ever afraid that she wasn't going to bring it home.
No, there was 3 safety cars that she had to restart the race on. And I mean, that's also quite a task. And she did all of it well. The last safety car was quite towards the end, but she still didn't know how many laps. Her goal was, of course, to pull away from Pulling, who was right behind her. I mean, she ended up leading with more of 3 seconds of a gap at the end.
Yeah, I think she won by 2 seconds, technically.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, still, so she ended up pulling away a little bit. But I mean, her focus is, of course, to drive a clean race, a fast race, to
stay away from everyone.
Yeah, and win, which she technically did.
Yeah.
But it's just so frustrating. I hope they kind of get their things in order, but it's just so frustrating that they celebrated amongst each other and nobody congratulated her. Like usually on F1 or even F2 or F3, 4, like you're like, oh, congratulations, P1, you won, whatever. Yeah. But
it's usually the first communication is between your race engineer and the driver being like, hey, congratulations. But once again, like we didn't hear anything and it didn't seem like there was any communication from her. She didn't know in which lap she was.
Yes.
And with the like safety cars and stuff like that, I'm sure you're not keeping track of it.
No.
You're not going to be counting in your head how many like races have I completed. You know?
No, it's absolutely... I mean, it's a bummer. There's still a lot more races, of course, to come for them. So hopefully they'll learn their lesson from this time and do better next time round. So we'll see. But it was definitely super interesting. Highly recommend watching an F1 Academy race as well. It's also, again, even shorter than an F2 race. But there's so much that happens. I mean, there's lots of action. They're really close together as well. I mean, it's highly competitive. So, I mean, definitely don't miss out on it. It's so much fun to watch. Yeah,
especially if you're a little bummed out about Formula 1 and you have F1 TV app. It's a no-brainer to me. Like, check out F1, check out F2, F3, F1 Academy. It's all incredibly fun racing. It is like, it's highly competitive. Like sometimes I'm like, they're so willing to risk it. They're like, I'm gonna go for this. They're so hungry. In F2, in F3, I mean F3 we didn't see, but I'm assuming, right? And in F1 Academy, they're so hungry, they're so willing to go for it.
And they're all just also such incredible professionals.
Yeah.
Like they're all very much athletes. They're all professional racers. They've had a long career.
Yeah.
I don't know, I felt like impressed on the radio how professionally they communicate. I remember at the beginning for the F1 Academy race, we heard one of the women over the radio, one of the Charlotte Tilbury sponsored driver, and she was like super excited, and then her engineer had to be like, hey, let's focus on the race. Let's
but she was like, I'm gonna get him. I actually didn't understand what she was saying.
I don't know, but she sounded like super excited, which I also get. Like, it's your second race, F1 Academy, in front of an F1 crowd, you know, on a big major track. So like, of course, be excited. And I also love seeing the excitement and the passion and
absolutely
all of that.
And it will be even more exciting to see where we will see those racers in other categories, because we will see a lot of Doreen this year.
Oh, yeah.
She's in so many other. We'll see her with the Iron Dames.
Yes.
So
endurance races. Dames,
exactly. So I'm just really excited. Also, the same thing with the F2 guys. We've seen Taylor Bernard in other. We saw him in Formula 4 UAE. So it's just really exciting to see these talented young people doing what they're, I guess, born to be doing. You know,
and
so it's really
also,
awesome.
It's also really curious, or I'm excited to see also just where their career goes now that we've been introduced to so many of them. Like, unfortunately, of course, not everybody will end up in F1, but I'm sure many of them will be or continue to be very successful race car drivers. Maybe we'll see them in different categories, which happens quite often, of course. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen to all of them.
Yes. So now we're going to come to the end of almost this end of this episode. And we're going to tell you guys a little bit about what you guys can watch this upcoming week when it comes to racing. So let's start out with, we're not going to talk about every single thing because it's just going to become more and more. In the description box below, you guys can find our RacePlazaMedia racing calendar for March that breaks down everything that you can watch, when you can watch it, what you can watch, when you can watch it, and where you can watch it, very importantly.
There's also going to be links to the different series. So if you don't know about them yet and we haven't covered them in a video yet, you can read up about it a little bit. And we try to provide as much information that's out there. As you can imagine, it's a lot to gather all the information, and they're not very forthcoming a lot of times with it or with details. They come out last minute, but at least so you have an overview what you could potentially be watching this weekend. Of course, it's March. A lot more things are happening. This weekend, however, it's going to be a little bit less than what we've had this past weekend. So we have a variety of different things happening. We have the British GT Championship, the Mazda MX-5 Cup, which is, I feel like, a fan favorite. A lot of people enjoy it.
We do have a video on the channel about this one as well.
Exactly. We do talk about what it is. And it's also so much excitement because it is these little cars driving together.
I would love to own a Miata.
Yes, you do. So it's also definitely something you want to watch that's happening. It's going to be on IMSA or IMSA.com. You can see it.
.com.
But also on the Mazda MX-5 Cup Series website, they usually post streaming links there as well. So there's a bunch of IMSA championships happening this weekend at the Sebring International Raceway in Florida.
Sorry, we agreed off camera that we're going to still refer to it as IMSA because IMSA just sounds weird.
It sounds
But the more you say it, the more you get used to it.
I know. That's why I'm trying to commit to it. So there's a lot of different races happening through them at the Sebring International Raceway.
Then we have also this upcoming weekend, we have Formula E coming back in Sao Paulo. Very, very exciting. I'm very excited to be watching it. I hope I get the chance to watch it.
Yeah, last time we had some trouble because it wasn't really available. No, it was also my mistake. I had the wrong time in mind, so we couldn't watch it live. But then afterwards to watch it, we didn't have access to it the same weekend, which was definitely a little bit of a bummer. But also back this weekend, again, of course, our fan favorite AMA Supercross round 10. This time they're going to Indianapolis.
Ooh, nice. Very cool.
Yes. Also always very exciting. We also have some NASCAR happening this weekend.
Yes.
In Tennessee.
The Craftsman Truck Series is coming back. The Cup Series is coming back. There's a Brazil Sprint, something like that. You guys can find it, all the details. So it's just so
NASCAR
much.
Brazil is happening. Yeah, there's lots of different races. I think those are like the top ones that we will probably look into, especially Formula E, AMA Supercross, of course, and then any of the IMSA competitions.
And then one thing that we haven't talked about, but that's also upcoming, is actually the FIA karting championships also happening this upcoming weekend. It is by mondokart.com. Round 1 is happening. But as I said, all the details in the description box below. Oh, no. Is that the following week?
I was going to say, yeah. So the karting
Sorry,
actually happens
excited.
the following week. So we're very excited about it. We will be also talking about it in a video. We're going to make a video about karting in general because I feel like it's very much the origin for a lot of racers.
Yeah.
Like that's where they come from. I wish I would have known this as a child, that you have to start karting to like do
Yeah, but
racing.
I think that it's also very expensive.
Of course. I mean, I don't think we could have afforded it growing up, but I mean, it was just something I never knew, that karting is kind of
I didn't really know that.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it has to do with it is also the left foot braking. Because I was reading about that you get a lot of practice also with left foot braking, and that can make a huge difference in your racing, because left foot braking is, I think, the faster and a lot of times maybe the preferred way, but sometimes I think in GT series sometimes they don't do that, but it can make or break, because like F1 guys, like of course they're like perfect on the on the left, left foot braking, because it's also like karting, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you do it with your right foot, it's with the left foot, right?
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
I just read about it in a book, so.
Okay, gotcha. Nice. Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely lots coming up this weekend. More and more will be coming up this season. I feel like it's finally really getting into gear, so more and more things will be happening. We will also be live streaming some watch parties in the future again, so be on the lookout if you guys want to join us. But I think
in the description, in the comment sections below, let us know what you've watched, what you're excited to be watching.
Yes.
I know it's so much, but we're open to talk about any racing. We love racing here, obviously. And as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
And for listening. We're going to be posting this video in the future as a podcast and as video. So you can either just listen to us chatting while you drive or work out, do the dishes, whatever, however you listen to podcasts, but you also can watch us if you want to see us. So definitely thank you so much for tuning in. Remember to like and subscribe. And
we will be seeing you guys here tomorrow at the Daily Racing Show. Mwah. Bye-bye. I like to end the show with a little bussy.